Luca Del Bel Belluz is having a fun time in the NHL. Andrew Cristall scored 7 points in the dub. We have the Rinkside Roundup on today's episode of Locked On NHL Prospects.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this podcast, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. I'm Hadi Kalakash, QMJHL and crossover scout for elite prospects, with Sebastian High, USHL and crossover scout for elite prospects. And on today's show, we have the Rinkside Roundup, where we look at the week's top performers in the prospect world and break down what they did in the past week to earn a highlight on this weekly article that we also put out on elite prospects. It's free to read, so feel free to go to eliteprospects.com/news. You'll find at the top end of the searches, and you'll be able to read through what we have to talk about these prospects. But we'll break this down for you on the podcast as well. In the first segment, we will talk about Luca Del Bel Belluz, who's been having a phenomenal time over in the AHL and earned his NHL call-up for the first time this season. He had a game last year in which he scored a goal. But his first call-up of the season, in 2 games, 2 goals, 1 assist. We'll break down what happened with him and his progression. And then the second segment, we'll look at Roman Katserov, a Blackhawks prospect who's been doing very well over in the KHL. He's almost a point a game. We'll also look at Blake Montgomery, who can't stop scoring. The Ottawa Senators prospect continues to rack up points in London in the OHL. And then the final segments, we have a pair of Washington Capitals prospects. Ilya Protas, who's also playing the OHL for Windsor, and Andrew Cristall, who's been absolutely tearing it up since his trade to the Spokane Chiefs. But before we get into any of that, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. If you're watching on YouTube, as usual, remember to like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you thought of the episode. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rate and review, and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. So let's get started right away here with the Columbus Blue Jackets prospect, Luca Del Bel Belluz. What a phenomenal season he's been having so far in the AHL. He's currently still the top scorer in the AHL, isn't he?
I believe he is. Yes, he was a player that was just absolutely lighting it up there for the Cleveland Monsters, and his combination, especially with Denton Matejchuk, was really something I really enjoyed watching this season. Definitely one of the more dynamic duos in the AHL this year. But he more than earned that NHL call-up, because this is a very intelligent player who has some very clear mechanical flaws in his game, but has adapted in ways to really give himself the best chance to be effective and in a variety of different ways as well. The one stands out there, and it's the net front game. This is a big, intelligent guy who's difficult to knock off his skates. He's listed at 6'1", 185. He plays and looks bigger than that. And he's a guy that is really able to box out defenders at the net front. And I've really enjoyed watching him kind of blossom into a specialist when the tools and the skating especially could have derailed his NHL chances had his development gone differently. So really good work for Del Bel Belluz himself, and also the Columbus organization for getting him to the NHL within like less than 3 years of being drafted.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a great progression, and I think it hints really well at kind of the different shifts in prospect development over the years. I think for the longest time, teams are trying to basically perfect their players and remove any errors in their game. And that's just not what makes an NHLer. An NHLer isn't necessarily good at every single thing that an NHLer should do. Specialists are becoming a lot more prominent in the NHL these days because roles are becoming more specific. Power play bumper, power play net front presence doesn't play the same as a half wall player. You need a different skill set for that. So having specialists in your lineup actually helps in a way in that sense. And I think development has started to reflect that. I think that's starting to happen with Luca Del Bel Belluz, for example. He's still a bad skater. That hasn't really changed in his game. He's still not able to cut back effectively or explode inside off the wall, or any of the things that I think skating is necessary for. But he circumvents that. He doesn't still do those things despite it being a weakness. He finds ways around that. So in the article, I kind of wrote about how making the NHL is less about overcoming weaknesses and more about turning lemons into lemonade. And I think that's exactly what Luca Del Bel Belluz has been doing. Planning himself at the net front, timing his routes well, engaging early and aggressively along the boards to win battles. I think that's kind of been the key to Luca Del Bel Belluz's offensive eclosion this year. And I checked, and he is currently still the top scorer in the AHL with 37 points in 34 games. Earned his call-up, played a couple games for the Blue Jackets, 2 goals and 1 assist in that span. 1 goal and 2 assists, rather. And he was kept off the score sheet on Tuesday against the Philadelphia Flyers, but points in his first 2 games. He still hasn't eclipsed 14 minutes, so he's mainly playing, third line minutes, which is fine for his current spot in the roster. But I think that Luca Del Bel Belluz is starting to establish himself as an NHLer with the way that he approaches the game, with the way that he plays, and he's contributing to the Blue Jackets' current insane run in the NHL. They're doing very, very good. And they stopped the Flyers, who are also kind of creeping up and starting to kind of improve their play. And they beat them 3-2 in the shootout. So in terms of how Luca Del Bel Belluz kind of projects heading forward into the lineup here for the Blue Jackets, where do you see him kind of long term in terms of the style that he'll play, the line he'll play on, the teammates that might help him, all that good stuff?
Yeah, well, I think this is a player that is destined for a middle six role. I think that very much is where he's likely going to end up if he's able to solidify his spot in the NHL. Maybe a fourth line thing if his trajectory really plateaus after this season. But with how he's been developing, and he's still only, 21 years old. He just turned 21 in November, and he's leading the AHL in points. I think there's still room to grow for this player. So I think a third line capacity would be my best bet. I think there is potential for second line upside, but it would have to be in a very specific role and position in order to play those second line minutes, especially with the other players that are in that Blue Jacket system. Del Bel Belluz was going to rely on dynamic wingers that can skate a lot faster than he can, and that can really cut inside well and explosively and bring that sense of just dynamic offense and push defenders back to buy Del Bel Belluz that space to get into where he can do his work. And he's really improved his connected passing game over the past couple of years. So I think he's going to pair quite well with quicker players, because he's also a really quick thinker of the game. So he can keep up mentally, even if the feet are a lot faster for the players around him. So I think playing with wingers that can bring that kind of style would be really valuable for this guy. I think if you're playing in a second line capacity, a guy like Kent Johnson, I think would be amazing if he's not playing on that first line away from Del Bel Belluz. But you have a lot of other players in that mix in Columbus that are really quite interesting and bring so many different toolkits, right? Of course, you have Voronkov and Marchenko, who are not going to be separated for their entire careers, clearly, because it's just working so well. But you have a lot of other players that could be matched with Del Bel Belluz, and he brings enough defensive solidity. I don't think you need to insulate him massively with a big time defensive piece on that line, but you do need that explosiveness, because if you pair him with 2 slower wingers, you're not going to be producing much at 5-on-5. It'll just be very low event hockey, which I don't think is what the Blue Jackets are trying to build here. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that the key part for him is playing with guys who are going to dominate possession. He's a quick touch playmaker. He's a quick touch player. A lot of his
cycle creator.
Yeah, exactly. His effective touches come off one touch plays. That's a lot of what he's been doing so far with Cleveland. Quick give and goes, quick one touch plays, tap-ins around the net, deflections, hopping on rebounds, recycling them. These are all things that don't require Del Bel Belluz to have the puck for more than half a second at a time. So I think the most effective way that you can maximize that from Del Bel Belluz is have someone who's a shooter and who's an effective puck possession player. I look at Cole Sillinger and I see exactly that. Right,
so that would be nice. Yeah,
that would be a great combination of skills on that side. So I'm really excited to see how Del Bel Belluz kind of shapes up for the Blue Jackets moving forward. I was always a big fan of his game, but him and Owen Beck were playing kind of 1 and 2 center in Mississauga in the day when they got
and
drafted.
Beck was always the second line center, despite being the better player at the time.
Exactly, and he was picked first. It's understandable. You see what Owen Beck brings to the game, and there's a soft skill gap between Del Bel Belluz and Owen Beck in terms of Del Bel Belluz having a bit more creativity and flashiness on the puck. But his game wasn't going to project that way. He was going to have to adjust because his skating is such a weakness. He was going to have to learn to be a one-touch player. And that might limit how much creative skill he can bring to the game, but that makes him a more effective NHLer, and we're seeing it so far. Again, he's turning lemons into lemonade. I love what he's been doing so far for the Blue Jackets. But that's our first segment done. We'll get into our second segment here in just a second, where we talk about Roman Katserov of the Chicago Blackhawks and Blake Montgomery of the Ottawa Senators. Let's just take a quick break and head into that in the second segment. Here at Locked On, we're driven for the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match instead with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. You can dish up busy work and use Indeed for everything: scheduling, screening, messaging, all of that in one place. You can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed data. Personally, I used Indeed to get my day job, and I found it super easy, super transparent, super straightforward. So I can only imagine how much that helps employers connect with the right candidates. And listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/locked on. Just go to Indeed.com/locked on right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply, but if you need to hire, you need Indeed. Alrighty, so moving forward with our second segment here, we'll be talking about Blake Montgomery and first Roman Katserov. What a beautiful season he's been having so far in the KHL. This is technically his second full KHL season. Last year, he put up 15 points in 52 games, something in that range. It's not a consistently effective KHLer from his first year, which is to be expected for a second round NHL draft pick. But I don't think anyone could have predicted him being one game shy of a point per game right now. Like 1 point shy of a point per game right now in the KHL. For the team that he's been with since he was a kid. Like, this is the team from his childhood town. He grew up in the Magnitogorsk system and has played all of his junior hockey, the MHL junior equivalent of Magnitogorsk. That's where he played. Like, this is a great story so far for Katserov, and a great selection from the Blackhawks, right?
Absolutely, it is, and I love that you highlight the fact that it is a hometown story here. Like, he was born in Magnitogorsk, and he's still playing there today at the age of 20. And as you mentioned, basically at a point per game pace there in the KHL after being a star in the MHL system there for quite a couple years. And then, as you mentioned, last season being a bit of a depth piece on that team. But he has been electric this year. I mean, he's been dominating offensively compared to all of his other teammates there in Magnitogorsk. He is tied for second in points with two other players, but the player in front of him and the two players he's tied with have all played at least 14 more games than he has. He has 23 points in 24 games. Everyone else has played around 40 or more games. So he's been really involved every single game he's played, getting really into that offense and playing a really like dynamic on puck game, which is what you want to see from a player like Katserov. He's a 5'9", 176-pound winger. He can play on both sides of the wing, but he has that high-end handling ability, some interesting goal-scoring flashes as well. I mean, he has more goals and assists this season in the KHL, which is something to note. And I think that Chicago must be really happy with how this selection is kind of turning out. I mean, there's a lot of players in that Chicago system that play that are similar profiles, perhaps, to Katserov. I'm thinking of guys like Nick Lardis, for instance. You have a lot of wingers that are not the biggest guys, but bring a lot of offensive and on-puck flash. But Katserov has been arguably the best of that bunch this season specifically. So a lot to like there, and the progression year to year from 15 points in 53 games to 23 and 24. Cannot complain whatsoever.
Absolutely. It's been very fun to watch. But also I'm noticing as well that he's producing on a team that isn't a high-end scoring team. Like, they've eclipsed 5 goals once in the last 10 games. They've averaged about 3. They had a lot of 2-1 wins. I mean, one 2-1 win stands out here against Avangard Omsk, where he scored both goals, like in a 2-1 win. So he's been very effective and really good minutes for Magnitogorsk as well. Like, he's playing anywhere between 17 and 20 minutes on 16 and 20 minutes on a nightly basis. So clearly top 6 minutes. And he's doing a lot with him. And I think the main standout with him is, I remember thinking in this draft year, like, this kid's going to have trouble producing even in the KHL because he's a small player who's a peripheral player. That combination usually, I mean, it's not easy to produce at a pro level when you can't really get off the boards as effectively as when you tend to stay on the periphery and kind of make passes off the boards rather than getting yourself off the boards. But now that's been the major change with him this season. He's been inside driven. He's carrying pucks in transition and attacking formations head on, pushing through defenses, kind of driving the net, hopping on rebounds. But he's also been, I think a lot of his points have come off the power play. He's a really good half wall shooter. I think he's still I think he's relatively kind of running a shooting percentage bender right now. But the playmaking skill really stands out with Katserov. It's really improved a ton since his draft year, and it continues to be something that he can build off of and create high-end chances with. So I'm really excited to see how Katserov kind of continues to build his game and kind of progress. But we do need to talk about Blake Montgomery as well, who's been phenomenal so far for the London Knights. It took him a while to get up to speed. In his first 5 games, he only had like 1 assist. But you could see that he was starting to figure out how OHL defenses work. And once he did, it was over. Like, he's at 16 goals in his last 16 games. He scored a couple of goals in back-to-back games this weekend, which earned him the spot in this Rinkside Roundup for the week's top performers. So, yeah, talk me through what you like about Blake Montgomery so far this year.
There isn't much to not like with Blake Montgomery so far this season. He's been fantastic. Even in the USHL before he made that transfer to the London Knights in the OHL, he only had 10 points in those 10 games with the Lincoln Stars, but Lincoln is a much lower scoring team than the London Knights are, and he was very impactful in those games as well. This is a physical player with pretty good handling skill. He gets to the inside and just has an absolutely heavy release that he uses really intelligently through screens, really well timed, and he uses his physicality as well to off puck get to dangerous areas, like take big lanes to the net front, even if it's just to open up some space behind him for his line mates to drop into. He's a really good team player that I know that London Knights are already very appreciative of in the locker room, because he makes their lives so much easier out there on the ice, and defensively as well. He's brought a lot of value, not just physically, but with really active stick work, really good motor on the forecheck, and quite opportunistic as well in terms of neutral zone defending and picking some pockets in there. So he's been getting involved in all 3 zones for London. But what has stood out the most for you? Because, I mean, 11 goals in 10 games in the past couple of weeks isn't half bad, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of it comes off of really intelligent rush spacing. Like, the way that it's the small details with him. It's the changes of pace. It's the way that he accelerates, decelerates, protects the puck. I mean, I've seen him. He does these little protective stick checks where he kind of shrinks defenders' kind of range with his kind of protective stick checks. He'll let go of the puck, let it kind of slide forward, and just focus on just getting the defender stick out of the way in order to open up a lane to get around them, to drive the net and all that stuff. The small details with him, a lot of them coming off the rush, but I think it's also the fact that just his motor, his effort level on the forecheck, and just his power forward game overall is just so polished already. I think he's already, for me, a top 3 power forward in the OHL, and he's looking like a bona fide steal for an overager who was producing decently last year, but not all that much. To be able to step into the OHL and do what he's doing so far is phenomenal. And I think a lot of it comes from the growth and his ability to kind of understand rush patterns, understand how to beat defenders at an OHL level. And I think a lot of the ways that he beats them right now could translate fairly well to the NHL. I mean, there's a path forward for him as a power forward in this league. Like, he's a phenomenal power forward, and he has a lot of elements that come with that. So yeah, I'm really excited.
Absolutely. And I think one question I wanted to ask you is like a kind of a thought experiment. Is Blake Montgomery going to remain a top 3 power forward in the OHL once Igor Chernyshov returns to play?
Yes.
Ooh.
I still think so. I love Igor Chernyshov, but there's a significant gap in rush pattern identification between the two. And like, that has a lot to do with how to play a power forward game, right? Like, it's one thing to be able to protect the puck and drive the net, but to be able to do it with translatable like rush patterns and acceleration, deceleration, do it all. Like, Chernyshov's a phenomenal power forward, and I think he brings a lot of those same elements, but not to the level that I've seen of Blake Montgomery so far this year. It's been absolutely phenomenal to watch him, but we will see. We haven't seen Chernyshov in the OHL so far.
And with Saginaw, no less.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch. I'm pretty sure that the moment Chernyshov hops onto the ice for Saginaw, it's going to be next to Michael Misa, and it's going to be an absolute treat to watch. But that's our second segment done. We'll get into our third here, where we talk about a pair of Washington Capitals prospects. Ilya Protas and Andrew Cristall are next. Let's just take a quick break before we head into that. If you're looking to buy cheap tickets last minute to any event, Gametime is the best place to secure them. Gametime is safe, secure, incredibly easy to use, and they're absolutely obsessed with saving you money. They've got deals at every step of the way, last minute deals, flash deals, zone deals, and they also have the Gametime guarantee to make sure you get the best price for your tickets as well. I use Gametime all the time. It's my go-to when it comes to buying tickets because my schedule changes around a lot, and I don't want the uncertainty of buying a ticket in the last minute and not knowing whether or not it comes in. Gametime is so effective when it comes to getting you your tickets. You can buy them up until the last minute before the event starts, and depending on the event, sometimes an hour after they start, the tickets are still available. You get your QR code within minutes, and you're able to scan it on entry and get into the event. And it's not just for sports, comedy, theater, you name it. They've got it all, and anything that requires tickets, you can get through Gametime. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, super simple. You just create an account and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. So again, download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Alrighty, so let's close things off here with a pair of Washington Capitals prospects, Ilya Protas and Andrew Cristall. There are a couple of very interesting prospects there in the Caps system. Cristall being probably the more notable of the two in terms of how much he's been talked about in prospect circles, but Ilya Protas is having a phenomenal season over in Windsor, right?
He really is. I mean, he's a 6'5", 201-pound left winger who was playing some pretty good hockey in the USHL last season with the Des Moines Buccaneers. And our USHL scout at Dobber Prospects last season, David Sod, was a very big fan of this player. So we gotten quite a few viewings in on him last year, but there was nothing of the caliber that he's been showing this season in the OHL with the Windsor Spitfires. He has been a puck possession dominant player who leverages physicality so effectively, but beyond just that, has just like been dominant in all three zones so far this year, right? I mean, 29 goals, 66 points, 38 games, while offering that physical game and I think also improved defensive habits compared to last season. This has been a fantastic year for Protoss, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the biggest progression in this game has been his shooting. Like he scored what, I think 17 goals last year in the USHL, 14 goals in the USHL last year in 61 games. Now he has 29 goals in 38 OHL games.
It's different.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been he's already doubled his goal totals in a better league. And almost half the games. Like it's insane what he's been doing so far. And I think a lot of it comes with like really good spacing and timing in the offensive zone, really good like feel for where space is, and just the fact that he consistently attacks that space and slides down defenders' backs and kind of feels that open ice in the offensive zone. I think his feel for the game has improved a ton. And if you look at his brother, Alexei Protas's progression over the years, it's quite similar in the sense that it's really post-draft that he started kind of showing those glimpses of goal-scoring ability and all that. And this, so far, like, Alexei Protas is pretty close to a point per game in the NHL. Took him a while to get there, but he got there eventually, right?
Absolutely. He has 36 points in 44 games this season with the Washington Capitals, including 18 goals. Yeah, it's been a fantastic year. I mean, in terms of like the skyrocketing value of both Protas brothers in that Washington Capitals organization this year, I think the Capitals kind of hit the jackpot there with that pair. But going back to Ilya real quick, I've been just so impressed with how not just comfortable he looks in the OHL from like the very first week of play this year, but he arrived this season primed to dominate, not just arrive and acclimate to the OHL. And it's a big jump in quality of competition and line mates and pace compared to the USHL, especially these past couple seasons. Really, really good year there for Ilya Protas, but I cannot say that he's been the most dynamic Capitals prospect in the CHL this year because I mean, that has to be Andrew Cristall, right?
100%. 60 points so far in the WHL.
In how many games?
And let me double check here because I don't have it in front of me. Andrew
30
Cristall.
in 30 games.
Yeah,
It's
he's a
67 points in 30 games now because he scored 7 points in one game.
That is right.
With Spokane.
Oh no, no, sorry, that's right. 67 points in 30 games this season. What an absolutely absurd tally from this kid. And honestly, like Kelowna wasn't that good. Like they were in sell mode at the deadline. They traded him, they traded Caden Price. So like they weren't a really set team, especially with TJ Ginla getting injured halfway through the year. The fact that this kid put up 2 points a game on that roster is bonkers. But now he's with Spokane, and I cannot name you a better combination of playmaking forwards than Andrew Cristall and Berkeley Catton. So that's who he's joining in Spokane. And you know what's funny?
Yeah.
Spokane was already the best power play in the WHL before adding Andrew Cristall to that mix.
This won't hurt.
It will not at all. So he scored 7 points, 3 goals, and 4 assists in a 12-2 thrashing of the Wenatchee Wild there on Saturday. And he was phenomenal with Berkeley Catton. You'd think they were playing together. They've been playing together for decades. Like the two were connecting so well on the power play at 5-on-5 off the rush. Catton's really good at kind of disguising his passes with look-offs and deception. And Cristall's really good at just catching pucks and rifling them in one motion. He's really good at setting up his hip pocket quickly to get that shot off. But he's also really capable in terms of high to low playmaking, lateral playmaking as well. So the fact that Cristall and Catton have already developed such efficient chemistry in like their second game together this year, phenomenal stuff from those two. And I think that it's absolutely bonkers that the best power play in the league added the best offensive player in the league to the already best power play in the league. Like it's just Spokane is going to punish teams for any mistake here, but from here until the end of the season and heading into the playoffs, right?
They really will. And I mean, when you look at the chemistry between Cristall and Berkeley Catton, and you just reflect on how dominant Cristall has been offensively, not just this season, but like this is the third year running that he's been among, if not the most dynamic player in the entire WHL.
Yeah.
And then reflect of why you didn't bring him to the World Junior Championships when Team Canada couldn't score goals if their life depended on it. Maybe this player would have helped. I mean,
no,
the
really?
Chiefs think it would help them, and they already have the best power play in the WHL. So I don't know. Maybe there could have been different decisions made there, but it's in the past now. We've spoken our words about.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, Spokane's showing us how effective it is to double down on skill gaps, right? Which is I think that would have been a great idea. But that's it for today's show. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, remember to like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you thought of the episode. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rating and review and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, remember to check out Locked On Sports Today. They've got all your news and updates about what's going on around sports. And make sure to tune in for our next shows as we continue our prospect coverage for the month of January. This has been Hattie Kalikesh with Sebastian High. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you tune in next time.